November 1953. Federal agents walk into the Horseshoe Casino in downtown Las Vegas and start pulling cash from the cage. They seize $1 million under a judge's order. The man who built the place, Benny Binion, is already a convicted killer. The casino that reshaped American gambling is about to be taken from the man who created it. But the real question was never about the raid. It was how a murderer from the back roads of Dallas ended up owning the most important casino floor in the country, and what it cost in blood to get there. Federal marshals pushed through the swinging doors of the Horseshoe Casino, boots echoing on the bare tile. The cage manager barely had time to look up before the warrant landed on the counter. U.S. District Court, signed and sealed. No warning, no negotiation. The agents fanned out, eyes fixed on the cash cage. Behind the bars, stacks of bills and casino chips sat in neat rows, just as they had every night for years. But this time, the money was not waiting for a gambler's lucky streak. It was evidence. A ledger was opened. Hands in latex gloves counted out the bankroll, bill by bill. The total was over $150,000 in cash and chips, the largest single casino seizure Nevada had ever seen. The order was clear: remove every dollar. The cage was emptied under the cold lights, each stack placed into government bags, sealed and initialed. The slot machines kept spinning in the background, but nobody was watching. The Horseshoe's famous promise, no betting limit, cash on hand for any wager, was broken in a single morning. The agents moved fast. They boxed up ledgers, shuffled through IOUs, and pulled out the day's receipts. Regulars watched from the bar, silent. Some whispered about the man who was not there. Benny Binion, the owner, was nowhere in sight. His name was on every license and every deed, but the seat at the end of the bar sat empty. Outside, a black government sedan idled at the curb. The press circled, snapping photos of agents carrying out sealed bags. Inside, the casino floor felt smaller, stripped of its legend. For years, Binion's Horseshoe had been the only room in Las Vegas where a gambler could bet any amount, drink for free, and walk away with a fortune. Now, the bankroll was gone. The magic was gone with it. A court order hung behind the counter, taped up for all to see. Nevada Gaming Control Board officials arrived with their own clipboards, jotting down every detail. The Horseshoe had failed to maintain its minimum bankroll, a direct breach of state regulations. The penalty was immediate seizure and permanent license revocation. Not a single word from Binion. His fate was being decided in absentia. The man who built the most important casino floor in America, who had survived Dallas shootouts and outlasted rivals like Herbert Noble, was suddenly invisible. The Horseshoe was left in the hands of strangers, stripped of its cash, its legend, and its king. But the question lingered, heavy as the silence on Fremont Street. How did a convicted killer from Texas ever build this empire? And what would happen now that the law had finally caught up to Benny Binion? Benny Binion arrived in Las Vegas in the summer of 1946, stepping off the Santa Fe line with a battered suitcase and a reputation that needed no introduction. His name didn't make the papers, but it appeared on the passenger list, an outsider with Dallas money and a gambler's eye for opportunity. He left behind a city where fortunes were built in back rooms and paid for in blood. Las Vegas offered something different, a chance to build an empire in daylight, with the law just close enough to keep the peace. The first real sign of Binion's intentions came in the Clark County Recorder's Office. In 1949, The deed record showed an $8,000 cash purchase of the El Dorado Club on Fremont Street. The seller, S. Shapiro, took his payment and disappeared. The building itself was unremarkable, a low-slung room with tired neon and a bar that never closed. But Binion saw more than a rundown card room. He saw a foothold, a place where he could rewrite the rules. He didn't chase the glamour of the Strip. Downtown, the stakes were smaller, but the game was looser. Here, a handshake could count for more than a contract. Binion planted himself at the center, betting that the city's future would be built not on spectacle, but on trust and nerve. By 1951, the transformation was complete. The El Dorado sign came down, replaced by Binion's horseshoe. The new name was more than branding, it was a statement. He tore out the carpets, scrapped the dress code, and opened the doors to anyone with cash and courage. No minimum bets, no maximums. Anyone could walk in, put a suitcase of money on the table, and Binion would match it, dollar for dollar. The house bankroll sat in plain view, stacked high in the cage, $1 million in $10,000 bills, horseshoe shaped under glass. It was both a promise and a challenge. Word spread quickly. Regulars noticed first, then the high rollers. The horseshoe became known as the only honest room in Las Vegas. Free drinks for every player, the best odds in town, and a sense that the risk was real. But behind the spectacle, questions lingered. Where did Binion get his capital? The deed listed only his name, but the cash had roots in Dallas. Numbers rackets, protection money, profits that never saw daylight. As the horseshoe's reputation grew, so did Binion's influence. He watched every bet, every face, every dollar that crossed the cage. The casino became his fortress, his stage. Regulators, rivals, and the old guard watched too, all wondering how long a man with a violent past could keep the most honest room in Las Vegas open. For now, the horseshoe's lights burned bright, and Binion waited in the shadows, ready for the next challenge. Dallas in the 1930s was a city built on secrets and cash. In the shadows of oil money and courthouse deals, Benny Binion ran a numbers racket that dwarfed every rival. The operation pulled in about $1 million a year, a sum that turned street corners into counting rooms and police into partners. The IRS would later call it the most lucrative illegal lottery in Texas. Evidence for that claim came from more than rumor. Federal auditors pieced together betting slips, cash flow ledgers, and sworn statements from former runners. The numbers added up, 1 million in gross receipts, year after year, from a single city. Binion sat at the top, controlling the flow with a network of street agents who fanned out across Oak Cliff, West Dallas, and the Italian district. Each agent collected small bets, nickels, dimes, the day's wages, feeding them up the chain to the main book. Every slip was logged, every dollar counted. At the center, Binion's office kept the real records, hidden from the law and watched by men who answered only to him. The hierarchy was tight. Ivy Miller, a trusted enforcer, handled collections and discipline. When someone skimmed from the policy book, Miller was dispatched to settle the score. The books stayed clean by force if necessary. The money didn't just buy loyalty, it bought silence. Dallas police officers and city deputies received regular payments from the syndicate. IRS audits from the late 1960s confirmed what Street Talk had always suggested. Investigations into Binion's operations stalled or vanished after quiet visits from local deputies. No exact figures survive, but the grand jury minutes describe a pattern of bribes and political favors that kept the numbers racket running untouched. Federal agents watched as city officials looked the other way, their pockets lined by the very bets they were supposed to police. Every dollar was laundered through a system designed for invisibility. The declared income never matched the cash flow. Auditors tracked the difference: hidden profits, untaxed and untraceable. The IRS used forensic accounting, comparing betting slips to bank deposits, matching witness testimony to the gaps in Binion's books. No ledger has ever surfaced, but the audit's methodology held up. The true scale of the racket was $1 million a year, a figure repeated in every major investigation that followed. The power of that money reached beyond Dallas. It funded Binion's move west, paid for the El Dorado Club, and underwrote the first $1 million display at the Horseshoe. The fortune was built on risk, but also on protection, a shield of cash, violence, and silence that let one man rule a city's underworld for decades. But in a world where every hand was bought, how long could the money keep the law at bay? Dallas under Benny Binion wasn't just about numbers and payouts. It was a city ruled at gunpoint, where every dollar of profit was backed by the threat of sudden violence. 2 men died in the 1930s: Ben Frieden in 1931, Sam Murray in 1936, each shot by Binion's hand. Both killings were ruled self-defense, but the coroner's reports listed gunshot wounds at close range, and the Dallas press whispered about payoffs that kept the law at bay. Police files vanished. Witnesses changed their stories. In Dallas, justice was a matter of who paid whom and how much. But the real war wasn't with the police. It was with Herbert Noble, a rival numbers king who refused to kneel. Noble ran his own operation, and for years, the 2 men circled each other, each waiting for the other to make a mistake. The feud escalated fast. Drive-by shootings lit up Dallas nights. In one attempt, Noble's car was riddled with bullets as he pulled out of his driveway. He survived, only to find his home bombed weeks later. The tally grew: 14 failed attempts, each more desperate than the last. Noble's wife, Mildred, wasn't as lucky. She died in a car explosion meant for him, her name added to a growing list of casualties in a war fought in alleys and empty lots. The violence reached its peak on August 13, 1951. Noble approached his ranch gate outside Dallas, unaware of the device wired to the latch. The explosion tore through the morning quiet, ending the rivalry in a blast that left little for the coroner to examine. Police called it an unsolved homicide. No one was charged. But in the back rooms of Dallas, everyone knew who stood to benefit. The Kefauver hearings later listed Noble's death as the final act in a bloody chapter, a warning to anyone who challenged Binion's grip on the city. Fear was currency. Every killing, every bombing sent a message. The Dallas numbers racket didn't just survive because of bribes or clever accounting. It survived because no one dared to cross the man at the top. Even after Binion left for Las Vegas, the shadow of that violence followed him. Regulators in Nevada asked questions. Old enemies disappeared. The Horseshoe's $1 million display sparkled under casino lights, but its foundation was built on silence and blood. No court ever convicted Binion of murder. No jury ever heard the full story. But the coroner files and grand jury minutes tell their own tale. In Dallas, power belonged to the man who could outlast every attempt on his life and erase every trace of the men who tried. How much of that legacy crossed the desert with him? And when the chips were down in Las Vegas, did the old rules still apply? Subscribe for more true crime stories that dig beneath the neon surface. Benny Binion turned the horseshoe into a gambler's paradise by breaking every rule the strip had set. He threw out the velvet ropes and the tuxedo dress code. Anyone with cash could walk in, sit down, and bet whatever they could carry. The old-timers called it the only honest room in Las Vegas. The promise was simple: no betting limit, ever. Binion matched every wager, no matter the size, right there on the table. The casino's bankroll was never hidden. It sat on display in the cage, stacked high in $10,000 bills, shaped like a horseshoe, $1 million under glass. It wasn't just a showpiece, it was a guarantee. If a player wanted to bet big, Binion had the cash to cover it. The stories spread fast. In July 1973, a gambler walked up to the craps table and slapped down $777,000 on the pass line. Binion did not flinch. The pit boss checked the cage, nodded, and the dice rolled. The bet held. The legend grew. No other casino in town would take that kind of risk. At the Horseshoe, it was just another Tuesday night. The house rules favored the player: free drinks, the best odds, and no maximums. Binion tracked every comp himself, making sure the biggest losers got the best steak dinners and the smallest bettors still left with a handshake. The ledgers showed it: more money paid out, more loyalty earned. High rollers from New York, Chicago, and Dallas made the pilgrimage, drawn by the chance to play for stakes that could change a life in a single hand. But the higher the stakes, the deeper the questions. How did Binion guarantee every bet? Where did all that cash really come from? And what would happen if the money ever ran out? Benny Binion's conviction in 1953 cut him off from the very floor he had ruled. Court transcripts spelled it out: 5 years at Leavenworth for tax evasion. The Nevada Gaming Commission moved fast, revoking his license and banning him for life. But Binion's grip never loosened. Even behind bars, his word shaped the Horseshoe. Officially, the casino passed to his wife, Teddy Jane, and later to his son, Jack. In practice, every major decision still ran through Benny, first by letter, then by whispered instructions delivered to trusted lieutenants. Gaming Control Board minutes from the late 50s. Record complaints about his constant presence on the floor, always just out of reach of the law. Jack Binion took over the Horseshoe's daily operations, keeping the promise of no betting limits and the $1 million display intact. But the family's troubles kept mounting. In 1970, Jack launched the first World Series of Poker in a back room of the Horseshoe. 7 players, a single table, and a champion chosen by secret ballot. The event was small, but it planted a seed that would outgrow the old Vegas. The World Series of Poker roster from that year reads like a roll call of legends: Johnny Moss, Doyle Brunson, Amarillo Slim. The winner took home $30,000 and a handshake from Jack. The dynasty's shadow never faded. In December 1989, Benny Binion died in Las Vegas at age 85. His death certificate lists heart failure, but the questions never stopped. Less than a decade later, tragedy struck again. Ted Binion, Benny's youngest son, was found dead in his Las Vegas home in 1998. The coroner's report called it a drug overdose. The police called it homicide. The case tore open old wounds, allegations of theft, betrayal, and murder for hire. Ted's fortune vanished, and so did the last of the old Binion magic. The Horseshoe survived, but the family's power was fractured. The scandals, the courtroom battles, the bodies, none of it erased the casino's legend. But every new headline forced the same question: Was the greatness of the Binyon name built on vision or on crimes that could never be washed away? Las Vegas runs on risk, but its foundation is built on secrets. Binyon's innovations, high-stakes play, the World Series of Poker, that million-dollar display, still define the Strip. Yet the line between legend and lawlessness blurs with every bet. In a city built by outlaws, greatness and crime remain inseparable. Subscribe for more true crime stories that never let the lights go out.